Imagine, imagine you are standing outside on a really clear, dark night. You are far away from all the city lights.
Yeah, middle of nowhere.
Exactly, just out in the middle of nowhere. And you are looking up way past the atmosphere of Earth, past our own local stars, and you lock your eyes onto this tiny, really faint smudge of light.
Which is the Andromeda Galaxy.
Right, the Andromeda Galaxy. And that little smudge is, I mean, it is 2.5 million light years away, which is just hard to even wrap your head around.
Oh, it's impossible to visualize.
It is. So to kind of put that distance in perspective for you, the listener, if you strapped yourself into the absolute fastest machine humanity has ever built.
That would be the Voyager 1 spacecraft.
Yep, the Voyager 1, which is currently screaming through the void at, what, about 17 kilometers per second?
Something like that, yeah.
So if you took that, a one-way trip to Andromeda would take you roughly 88 billion years. Yeah. 88 billion. That is more than 6 times the current age of the entire universe. So it is basically the ultimate unbreakable barrier of reality.
It really frames human ambition, doesn't it? I mean, when you look at distances like that, our conventional physics essentially tells us we are permanently trapped.
Right.
We are trapped by the speed of light. We are trapped by the sheer, expanse of space-time. And we are just physically trapped by the limitations of chemical or even nuclear fuel.
But what if you didn't actually have to cross that distance?
Right.
Like, what if you could stand in your backyard, pull out a little handheld device powered by a simple 1-watt battery?
Literally the power of a tiny little flashlight.
Exactly. And you punch in some coordinates and you step directly onto the surface of an exoplanet in the Andromeda Galaxy in exactly 0 seconds.
Not millions of years, not thousands, not even like a fraction of a single second, just 0. Instantaneous transport.
And that is exactly what we are getting into today. In today's deep dive, we are unpacking a source document that claims this exact thing is possible.
Yeah, it's quite the document.
It really is. It's a massive, meticulously detailed physics and engineering framework. It's called the Transdimensional Unified Field Theory, or TDUFT for short.
Authored by George James Dukas in 2026.
Right. And I want to be incredibly clear right up front with you guys. This is not a science fiction pitch. It is not, some philosophical thought experiment or a fantasy novel outline.
No, not at all.
The sources we are looking at contain a complete hard mathematical and engineering blueprint for a real technology. They call it a Philatus teleportation system.
Yeah.
And it is making this audacious claim that distance, exactly as we understand it, is just entirely an illusion.
And importantly, it actually backs up that claim. I mean, it comes with derived constants, falsifiable experiments, and this incredibly rigid structural logic.
Right. It's not just hand-waving.
Exactly.
No.
We have always thought of space as this empty container, like a big dark box that we have to physically push matter through, right? And we have to burn massive amounts of energy to cross even tiny fractions of it. But TDUFT flips this entirely. It basically argues that the vacuum of space is not an empty box at all. It is a highly structured mathematical grid.
A geometric architecture.
Yes, woven from a single number, which is the golden ratio.
Yeah.
So if you know the operating frequency of that grid, you do not travel through it. You just realign your coordinates with it.
So I want to talk directly to you, the listener, for a second here. Whether you are, an armchair physicist who loves wrestling with quantum mechanics, or an actual engineer who builds hardware, or maybe just someone who is intensely fascinated by the ultimate limits of human potential, well, this deep dive is going to fundamentally break down and rebuild your entire understanding of the cosmos.
It really is a paradigm shift.
Absolutely. So I think we have to start with the stage itself. How do we currently view the universe, and how does TDUFT tell us we are getting it completely, fundamentally wrong? Let's talk about the standard picture first.
Sure. So in modern physics, we essentially rely on 2 incredibly successful frameworks to understand reality, right? First, you have Einstein's general relativity.
The big stuff.
Exactly. The macro universe. Space-time as this smooth, 4-dimensional fabric. Mass and energy curve this fabric, which is basically what we experience as gravity.
Like a bowling ball on a trampoline.
Right, the classic analogy. And it is devastatingly accurate. It predicts black holes, gravitational waves, the exact precise orbit of Mercury. But here's the thing. In general relativity, that space-time fabric has absolutely no internal architecture.
It's just flat.
It is a continuous, smooth stage. The actors, planets, stars, you and me, we move around on it, but the stage itself is totally formless.
It is just the empty space between the stuff that actually matters.
Precisely. But then you have the second framework, which is quantum field theory, or QFT.
Right, the really small stuff.
Exactly. This looks at the vacuum at the absolute smallest microscopic scales. And QFT comes in and says, wait a minute, the stage isn't empty at all. It seethes with energy.
Like a boiling pot of water?
Yeah, virtual particles are constantly, popping in and out of existence. Zero-point energy fluctuations are happening everywhere. It is this chaotic, boiling sea of activity. And we can actually measure this energy in a laboratory.
But there is a catch, right?
Right. QFT still views this activity as largely formless and isotropic.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning it is just a random, unstructured boil that looks exactly the same in all directions. There is no grid.
And this is exactly where the TDUFT source material just drops the hammer. It comes in and says, no, the vacuum isn't a smooth sheet, and it definitely isn't just a random boiling sea.
Right. TDUFT assigns the vacuum a very specific, highly rigid, permanent geometry. It claims the vacuum is constructed of a 64 tetrahedron philatus.
Okay, let's slow down and kind of build that visually for people. So a regular tetrahedron, right, that is basically a pyramid with a triangular base.
Yes.
It has 4 faces, 4 vertices. It is pretty much the simplest third-dimensional shape you can possibly make.
Right. And TDUFT asserts that if you take exactly 64 of these tetrahedra and you arrange them around a central node, something mathematically miraculous happens.
What happens?
We get this unique, perfectly balanced structure that achieves full 9-fold rotational angular closure.
Okay, that is a lot of big words.
I know. Let me break it down. It basically means the angles pack together so perfectly that they create a locally spherical but globally recursive structure. The nodes of this geometry are spaced exactly by the golden ratio, which is 1.618.
Wow.
And this structure, this specific geometric pattern, tiles the entire universe. Space is literally made of this solid, invisible grid.
Okay, so let me try an analogy here. Conventional physics basically treats the universe like a blank sheet of paper.
Sure.
If I want to get from the top left corner of the paper to the bottom right, I have to draw a line across it. I have to physically traverse the distance, and the speed of my pen is strictly limited by the speed of light. I have to interact with every single millimeter of that paper.
That is exactly the paradigm we've lived under for an entire century.
But TDUFT says the universe is more like a highly structured spreadsheet, like a massive universal database grid.
I love that analogy.
Right. We aren't drawing lines across a blank page. We are existing as data in specific cells. So getting from Earth to Andromeda isn't about pushing our physical matter across the page against the resistance of space.
Right. You aren't fighting the friction.
Exactly. It's literally just taking our data from cell A1, altering our coordinate index to cell Z99, and just boom, materializing there.
Because in standard four-dimensional space-time, moving naturally takes time and energy to cross a physical distance. But in the five-dimensional philatus, this cosmic spreadsheet you are visualizing, a displacement simply changes your lattice index.
So I'm just changing my address.
You are. You aren't dragging a file physically across a desktop.
Right.
You're just changing the directory path of the file itself. So the time cost is set by the processor speed of the lattice, not by the speed of light.
But hold on, I have a massive, massive problem with this.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, a spreadsheet is visible, right? I can physically see the grid lines on my computer screen. If this 64 tetrahedron grid is the fundamental rigid structure of literally all reality, why can't we see the grid lines of the universe?
It's a fair question.
Like, why don't our massive telescopes or our most powerful microscopes pick up this geometric scaffolding? Because I have to be honest, it kind of sounds a bit like, sacred geometry mysticism at first glance.
Yeah, that is exactly the pushback literally any standard physicist would have immediately. And it's exactly why TDUFT points directly to a highly documented standard physics experiment to prove it.
Which experiment?
The Casimir effect. The document argues that we actually can feel the grid lines. We just haven't recognized them for what they really are yet.
Okay, explain the Casimir effect for us, but just the way standard physics understands it first. Let's start there.
Sure. So in standard physics, the Casimir effect is a proven, completely measurable phenomenon. If you take two uncharged, perfectly conducting metal plates and you put them incredibly close together, like micrometers apart.
So practically touching.
Right. But in a complete total vacuum, what happens is they will actually be pushed together. There is a spontaneous attractive force between them.
Even though there is no charge.
Exactly. And the reason standard physics says is because the vacuum isn't empty. It's that boiling sea of quantum fluctuations we mentioned earlier.
Right, the boiling water.
But the gap between the plates is so incredibly tiny that only certain wavelengths of those fluctuations can physically fit between them.
Oh, I see. So it restricts the vacuum activity between the plates?
Exactly. It excludes all the larger wavelengths, so there's physically more vacuum pressure pushing on the outside of the plates than there is on the inside, which essentially forces them together.
Okay, so it's sort of like putting two boats really close together in a chaotic, wavy ocean. The big waves on the outside smash them together because the narrow strip of water between them is basically blocked from making big waves.
That makes perfect sense.
So that is the standard view. But how does TDUFT reinterpret this ocean to prove a rigid spreadsheet grid?
Well, TDUFT predicts that because the vacuum is not a random ocean, but rather a specific structured phi lattice, it has a precise resonant architecture.
Okay.
So if you perform a highly sensitive Casimir experiment, but instead of just flat plates, you use resonators tuned to exactly the frequency of this lattice and its harmonic multiples.
What happens then?
You won't just see a smooth, continuous, attractive force like those two boats in an ocean.
What will you see?
You will see highly structured anomalies, like actual spikes and valleys in the force that perfectly match the phi recursive intervals of the lattice itself.
Wait, really?
Yeah. It is the difference between hearing a massive crowd of people talking in a stadium, which is just white noise,
Right, just a roar.
versus hearing an orchestra playing a specific symphony. If you actually tune your instrument to the orchestra, you will hear the specific distinct notes.
Oh, wow.
TDUFT claims that if we look at the Casimir force at specific resonant intervals, we will literally map the exact tetrahedral geometry of the vacuum.
So we can physically see the grid lines.
Yes, this is immediate, hard, falsifiable proof. You can literally test it in a lab today. You either see the rigid grid lines in the Casimir spectrum, or the entire theory is dead on arrival.
That is a staggering claim, man, because it completely takes it out of the realm of like theoretical chalkboard math and puts it right onto a physical lab bench.
Exactly.
Because if the universe really is a spreadsheet and we can actually physically map the grid lines using the Casimir effect, well, the next logical question is, what is the exact language or code that governs its cells?
Right. How do you manipulate it?
Yeah. How do we write the formulas to move the data from cell to cell? Which leads us beautifully right into the next major revelation in the source material, which is the 5 foundational numbers.
Yeah, and to really understand why these 5 numbers are so revolutionary, we really need to look at the massive, sort of unspoken frustration inherent in modern physics right now.
Tell me about it.
So, the standard model of particle physics is without a doubt our absolute best description of the universe's building blocks. But it has a really ugly, largely hidden secret.
The fudge factors.
Yes, it relies on 19 free parameters.
So for people who don't know, free parameters are basically just numbers we have to guess or measure in a lab because the math itself doesn't explain them at all.
Precisely. 19 arbitrary numbers, like the specific mass of an electron, or the strength of the electromagnetic force, or the mixing angles of quarks.
We just have to measure them and plug them in.
Right. We measure them, we manually plug them into our equations, and then the math works. But the theory fundamentally cannot tell us why the electron weighs what it does.
It just does.
It just does. It is an enormous, glaring gap in our fundamental understanding. Every single one of those free parameters is essentially a giant neon sign pointing to a hole in the theory that just says, we do not know why this is the way it is.
And it gets worse with the new theories, right?
Oh, much worse. Advanced theories like string theory potentially require hundreds or even thousands of these arbitrary adjustments just to make the equations balance.
It's like having a recipe for a cake, but the recipe doesn't actually tell you how much flour or sugar to use.
Right.
You just have to keep blindly baking cakes until one tastes right, and then you just write that number down and pretend it was part of the recipe all along.
That is exactly it. But now look at TDUFT. TDUFT does not have 19 free parameters. It definitely does not have thousands. It has 5 constants, only 5.
Just 5 numbers for the whole universe.
Yes. And here is the absolute kicker, the thing that makes this so wild.
Yeah.
Every single one of them is derived.
Wait, none of them are plugged in.
None of them are assumed or plugged in as fudge factors from observational measurements. They arise inevitably from pure geometry and fundamental chemistry.
Wow.
The theory is incredibly brittle by design. If any one of these 5 derived numbers is proven wrong, or even slightly inconsistent, the entire framework just collapses entirely.
I love that. I really do. It's not hiding behind layers and layers of abstract, untestable complexity. It's basically just putting its chin out and saying, go ahead, hit
And
me.
it's daring you to break it.
So let's go through these 5 numbers that supposedly rule the entire cosmos. And the first 2 are sort of, they're kind of a mirrored pair, right?
Yes. Phi and its inverse, psi.
Okay, break those down.
Phi is the golden ratio, which is approximately 1.618033. Psi is its inverse conjugate, which is negative 0.618033.
Right.
Now, in TDUFT, these are not just, beautiful aesthetic proportions that you find at a sunflower or a nautilus shell or the spiral of a galaxy.
Even though they are there.
They're there, but here they are active physical operators within the cosmic grid. Phi acts as the expansion operator, so when you apply it mathematically, it literally moves your coordinate outward through the lattice shells.
And size.
Psi acts as the contraction operator. It pulls your coordinate inward.
But I have to ask, why those specific numbers? I mean, why the golden ratio of all things?
Because the math here fundamentally relies on something called the Vieta closure identities. When you have a perfectly recursive geometry, like our 64 tetrahedron grid, the relationships between the individual nodes are strictly governed by these identities. And the most critical one is that phi multiplied by psi equals exactly -1.
Wait, hold on. 1.618 times negative 0.618 equals exactly -1.
Yes, expansion times contraction equals a perfect, clean mathematical inversion. It is mathematically pristine.
Okay, sure, the math is neat, but what does that actually mean physically? Why does the universe even care that they multiply to -1?
Because it guarantees that the lattice is conservative, meaning energy isn't just randomly created or destroyed when you move a coordinate through it.
Oh, I see.
If you expand a wave outward by phi and then you contract it inward by psi, you haven't lost even a fraction of a watt of energy to the void. You just perfectly invert the phase. It mathematically proves that the geometry packs together perfectly without any gaps or any overlaps anywhere in the universe.
Okay, so that is numbers 1 and 2. They are basically the expansion and contraction keys to the universal spreadsheet. What about the third number?
The third number is F0, the base operating frequency of the entire universe.
The cosmic hum.
Yes. And it is strictly defined as 111.101 repeating hertz. Or, if you want to express it as a fraction, 1,000 divided by 9.
Okay, I have to stop you. I am sorry, but I have to push back hard on this one.
Go for it.
You are telling me that the fundamental frequency of the entire universe, the baseline hum of reality, is 111.101 hertz.
Yes.
I mean, I can generate that with a $50 synthesizer I bought in my basement. It's literally just a low bass note. You're telling me the profound, ultimate secret to the cosmos isn't some super exotic trillion electron volt Planck scale vibration happening in a multi-billion-dollar super collider in Switzerland, but something I can literally play on a cheap Bluetooth speaker. It just sounds absurdly simple.
It does sound absurdly simple, especially to a modern physicist who has been trained for decades to look for answers at unimaginably high energy levels.
Right.
But the source material is completely adamant on this point. This simplicity is exactly the point. The universe is fundamentally scale invariant. The base frequency, that 111.101 hertz, isn't just some arbitrary audio tone they picked. It emerges purely, mechanically from the physical geometry of the 64 tetrahedra we discussed.
But how does a shape create a frequency? I'm not following.
Okay, think about it like this. When you pack those tetrahedra together to form the universal grid, they achieve a perfect 9-fold rotational symmetry in their tiling period.
Okay.
Imagine a massive geometric combination lock. And this lock has to click through 9 exact specific positions to complete 1 full rotation and lock perfectly into place.
Okay, I'm visualizing the lock.
That 9-fold symmetry basically means the vacuum lattice completes 1 full structural closure cycle every 9 1,000ths of a second.
So 9 milliseconds.
Exactly. If a cycle takes 9 milliseconds, then 1 second, which is 1,000 milliseconds, divided by 9 gives you exactly 111.101 repeating cycles per second, which is hertz.
Oh, wow. So it's the physical rhythm of the geometry opening and closing perfectly. It is essentially the processor clock speed of the universe.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And here's the crucial part. Because it is a relatively low macroscopic frequency, it actually allows large physical matter, like a human body or a piece of sapphire or an entire starship, to phase lock with it.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Right. If the lattice hummed at some exotic subatomic Planck scale frequency, we could never, ever resonate a macroscopic object with it without instantly disintegrating the object.
Because it would just vibrate apart.
Exactly. The universe's operating frequency is highly accessible, precisely so that large-scale structural coherence can exist at all.
Okay, you know what? When you explain the ninefold rotation like that, the 111 hertz actually makes total structural sense. It is not a sound at all. It's a geometric refresh rate.
Exactly.
I am tracking now. Okay, what is number 4?
Number 4 is epsilon. This is the universal lattice constant, and its exact value is 0.00007542 electron volt.
Okay, what does that do?
This number dictates the coupling strength of the whole system.
Okay.
Essentially, it's how much energy it takes to physically click into the grid.
The entry fee.
Right. And what is absolutely amazing about this number is how TDUFT derives it.
Yeah.
It doesn't pull this out of some crazy cosmological abstraction or distant starlight measurement.
Where does it come from?
It derives it from a highly measured, completely mundane physical quantity right here on Earth.
Huh.
The single carbon-carbon bond energy.
Wait, the chemical bond, the
Yeah.
bond that holds all organic chemistry together.
Yes.
The literal stuff that you and I are made of.
Exactly. The carbon bond has been measured independently thousands of times by chemists all over the world. It is 83 kilocalories per mole, which converts exactly to 3.597 electron volts.
Okay.
TDUF identifies the carbon atom as structurally sitting exactly in the 6th Phi shell of this cosmic lattice. So
Right.
when you take that highly measured carbon bond energy of 3.597 eV
Sure.
and you run the lattice math backward from the 6th shell all the way down to the baseline 0 shell, epsilon drops out perfectly.
It calculates exactly to the 0.0002 number.
Yes, exactly, 0.00007542 eV. And furthermore, this exact energy value perfectly matches the thermal coherence threshold of 24 Kelvin.
That is insane.
It links biology, terrestrial chemistry, and macroscopic cosmology directly together, without a single fudge factor.
It is basically saying that the structural integrity of a human body is governed by the exact same geometric rules that hold the vacuum of deep space together.
Yes, it is.
We aren't just living in the universe, we are structurally identical to it.
Exactly.
That honestly gives me absolute chills. Okay, what is the 5th and final number? We've got expansion, contraction, the clock speed, the entry fee. What's last?
The 5th number is eta phi, the tetrahedral boost factor.
The boost factor.
Its value is 10 to the 12th power, 1 trillion.
That's a big number.
It is. This represents the natural amplification provided by the sheer geometry of the lattice itself. Because the base unit cell has 64 tetrahedra, and each node naturally supports 1 bit of root selection in the mathematical system, the recursive geometry naturally acts as a massive passive amplifier.
So it's like a cosmic megaphone.
A great way to put it.
If I just whisper into it, the shape of the megaphone itself amplifies my whisper 1 trillion times without me adding more power.
That is a perfect analogy. And this is the magic key for teleportation. Without this trillion-fold geometric boost factor, manipulating the fabric of space to reach Andromeda would theoretically require the energy output of an entire sun.
It would just be impossible.
Totally impossible.
Right.
But with this geometric boost, human-scale power levels, like a simple 1-watt battery, can actually reach across the entire galaxy.
Right.
The lattice does all the heavy lifting for you.
Okay, so let me summarize where we are. We have the grid, we have the spreadsheet, and we have the 5 constants that write the formula to move the cells around.
Right.
But, knowing the universe's operating frequency and having the blueprint is one thing. Building a physical, tangible engine to use it is another.
Absolutely.
How do all these constants actually combine into a vehicle? Which brings us to the core of the document, the master equation, the dimensional bypass.
Right. The document refers to this as the Dmax equation. Dmax meaning the maximum achievable displacement range.
Okay.
This is the literal engineering blueprint for reaching the stars. And it's a product formula, meaning all the variables are multiplied and divided together to give you your final distance.
Let's lay it out. Let's not rush this part because I want to understand what I would actually be building in a lab.
Okay. The equation states that your range, Dmax, equals phi to the 4th power multiplied by the eta phi boost factor we just discussed.
Okay, the trillion-fold boost.
Right. That is then multiplied by a fraction. In the numerator of the fraction, you have q times p times a.
QPA. Got it.
In the denominator, you have Planck's constant, the resonant frequency, Boltzmann's constant, temperature, and the length squared.
Okay, that is quite the denominator.
And finally, that whole fraction is multiplied by a shell-stepping factor.
Okay, I have to admit that is a lot of alphabet soup. Let's break down the actual physical variables, like the engineering levers a human engineer can actually pull to make a machine go further. Q, P, A, and P.
Right, these are the things you actually control in a lab. Let's start with the numerator, the things that increase your range. Q is the quality factor of your resonator.
What does that mean physically, like in plain English?
In physics, Q measures how sharply and cleanly your device is tuned to a specific frequency without leaking any energy to its surroundings.
Oh, like an instrument.
Exactly. Think of a cheap acoustic guitar versus a master-crafted Stradivarius violin. If you pluck a string on the Stradivarius, the sound rings out incredibly pure and sustains for a very long time
Right, it doesn't just immediately dampen.
because it has a really high Q factor. It doesn't lose energy to internal friction or bad acoustics. In our machine, we need a resonator with a massive Q factor tuned exactly to that 111.101 hertz. Higher Q means a cleaner resonance, which fundamentally means drastically further range.
Got it. Okay, P is power, obviously.
Yes, power in watts, just the raw rate at which you pump energy into the lattice.
And A is aperture.
Aperture area, basically how big is the physical volume you are trying to resonate and transport. A handheld device has a very small aperture. You're moving a few cubic meters. A starship has a massive aperture. And interestingly, increasing the area actually increases your range because you are successfully coupling with more nodes of the universal lattice simultaneously.
So if I'm looking at this equation, to travel further across the universe, I don't necessarily need a bigger gas tank. I don't just infinitely increase P, the power.
No, you don't.
I could just, machine a pure crystal to increase my Q, or build a slightly larger envelope to increase my A.
Exactly. It's a game of efficiency, not brute force.
I like that.
But then you have the denominator, the things actively fighting against you. And the most critical one by far is T temperature.
Why does temperature matter so much for teleportation?
Because thermal energy is literally just the random vibration of atoms. That random vibration creates static.
Noise.
Exactly. It disrupts the pure 111 hertz quantum coherence you're desperately trying to establish. If your crystal is hot, the atoms are shaking all over the place, and the delicate resonance breaks.
Makes sense.
So the colder your resonator, the lower the T in the denominator, and therefore the exponentially farther you go. This is exactly why operating at liquid nitrogen or liquid helium temperatures drastically improves your range. You are essentially silencing the thermal static.
Okay, I understand the engineering variables now, but I want to look at the very front of the equation again. It starts with a massive multiplier, phi to the fourth power.
Yeah.
The document calls this the dimensional cascade. And I have to be completely honest with you, when I first read that, it sounded like pure sci-fi magic.
It does sound like magic.
Right. It isn't just an arbitrary number they threw in to make the math work, right? It must represent something profound about how we are actually moving.
It absolutely does. It is the mathematical and physical manifestation of stepping entirely outside of our normal reality. In TDUFT, the exponent 4 directly corresponds to a cascade through 4 successive levels of dimensional induction.
Okay, walk me through that cascade.
Yeah.
How do we get from 1D to 5D?
Okay, you start with a zero-dimensional quantum state, which is pure potential. When you activate the resonator, you mathematically extend to one dimension, a line.
Okay.
You then extend to 2 dimensions, creating a planar volume. Mathematically, expanding a line to a plane adds a factor of phi squared.
Tracking.
Next, you extend that plane into 3 dimensions, enveloping a solid object, like a human crew member. This adds a factor of phi cubed.
Okay, so now my 3D body is entirely enveloped in this resonant field bubble. What is the fourth step?
You induce the 4th dimension, which is gravitational metric lock. You physically synchronize the mass of the crew member with the geometry of the lattice.
Wow.
And once that 4D lock is successfully achieved, you step cleanly into the 5th dimension. The mathematical net multiplier for this full-dimensional bypass, going from 0 all the way to 5, resolves perfectly to exactly phi to the 4th power.
Let me try to visualize this because it is incredibly abstract. Let's refine my filing cabinet analogy from earlier. Standard movement in our 3D universe is basically like being a tiny ant crawling across the face of a single piece of paper inside a filing cabinet folder.
Okay, and the paper itself represents our standard 4D spacetime.
Right. And if the ant wants to get to the bottom of page, it has to physically walk every single inch of the paper.
Exactly.
What this phi to the 4th dimensional cascade is doing is essentially saying, we aren't driving a tiny car across the paper. We are enveloping the ant in a bubble. The ant lifts physically off the paper, completely moving into the depth of the filing cabinet drawer itself.
Yes.
It changes its file index number from folder A to folder Z and then just drops back down onto a completely different piece of paper millions of light years away.
That is it, exactly.
The fifth dimension isn't some mystical sci-fi realm of glowing lights and floating geometric shapes. It's simply the depth of the index directory.
That is a phenomenal way to describe it. You are literally stepping out of the continuous geometry of the page and into the discrete geometry of the directory. And understanding this exact mechanism is absolutely crucial because it resolves the most famous, seemingly unbeatable argument against faster-than-light travel in all of standard physics. The causality paradox.
Right, the grandfather paradox. The idea in relativity that if you go faster than the speed of light, you are fundamentally traveling backward in time, and you could accidentally arrive before you even left, completely altering causality.
Yes. In standard relativity, FTL travel inherently breaks causality. It literally breaks the universe. But TDUFT bypasses this paradox entirely.
Because we aren't moving through space.
Exactly. You aren't moving through space-time faster than light. You are completely leaving 4D space-time, altering your coordinate in the 5D finesse, and then re-entering.
Oh, man.
The lattice index, this directory folder you are moving through, is not a space-time interval. There is absolutely no mathematical reference frame where your displacement appears to travel backward in time because the displacement has absolutely no time-like component whatsoever.
You don't break the speed of light because you just completely ignore the distance?
You step around the distance entirely.
Okay, that makes total sense on a mathematical level. But, like, practically speaking, if I am not traversing the physical space, how do I not end up materializing inside a star? Or just floating dead in the vacuum of intergalactic space?
Good question.
How do we physically steer if we aren't moving through space? How do we pick a specific destination without getting completely lost in the 5D filing cabinet?
And that brings us directly to navigation, which the document details quite extensively. Piloting the lattice.
Okay, who's driving?
Navigation in this framework is strictly governed by something called the Noblify routing operator. It is essentially a mathematical algorithm that calculates the path of steepest descent to your target.
Like water flowing down a mountain, it doesn't need to know the whole map. It just constantly finds the fastest, steepest way to the bottom.
Precisely. You input your target destination in lattice coordinate units. The algorithm calculates the mathematical derivative with respect to your current index. It then applies those golden operators we discussed earlier, phi to expand toward the target and psi to contract. And what is brilliant about it is that it is entirely self-correcting.
Oh, so?
Because it's an iterative steepest descent algorithm. Let's say a little thermal noise at your crystal causes your resonator to drift slightly off course during the induction.
A little bump in the road.
Right. The very next microscopic step of the algorithm automatically computes a brand new gradient from your current slightly drifted position and instantly compensates.
Oh, wow.
You literally cannot get lost because the physics of the lattice inherently pulls you into the lowest energy state, which is defined as your precise destination coordinate.
So we have our steering wheel. The algorithm basically does the driving. But the source material also details 3 different gears we can use to make the jump, right? The polarity states.
Yes. The routing algorithm dictates where you go, but the polarity state dictates how you go.
Let's hear the gears.
The first is called cruise polarity. This mathematically applies the phi expansion operator at both the origin point and the destination point. Phi times phi equals phi squared.
What does phi squared actually do physically?
It creates a self-reinforcing wave packet, a soliton that physically ripples through the lattice. It's an actual transit. Because of this, it is slower.
How slow?
A trip from Earth to the galactic core, which is about 26,000 light years away, takes roughly 13 seconds in cruise mode.
Wait, I have to laugh at that. 13 seconds to travel 26,000 light years is considered the slower gear.
I know, in the context of TDUFT's zero latency potential, yes, 13 seconds is a long time. But cruise mode is absolutely necessary for massive, high-inertia objects.
Like what?
Like moving an entire miles-long starship. The phi-squared scaling allows the quantum energy to remain stable and coherent over massive volumes of matter. It prevents the ship from shattering during transit.
Okay, so cruise is the heavy-duty gear for the big rigs. What about the fast lane?
That is strike polarity. This is where the real magic happens. Strike mode applies the phi expansion operator at the source and the psi contraction operator at the destination.
Ah, I see where this is going.
Right. By the Vieta closure identity we discussed earlier, phi times psi I equals exactly -1.
Total mathematical inversion.
Yes. It perfectly inverts the phase. In quantum mechanics terms, it acts as a perfect swap gate.
What does that mean?
The origin nodes and the destination nodes essentially just swap quantum states. Because it is a direct mathematical inversion rather than a physical wave propagation, the transit time is exactly 0 seconds.
0.
Instantaneous. A crew can step to Andromeda, 2.5 million light years away, and absolutely 0 time elapses. You initiate the jump, and you are immediately standing under an alien sun.
And just for completeness, what happens if things go wrong? There's a third gear, right?
Abort polarity. Mathematically, it is psi times phi. It violently reverses the displacement in less than a second.
Ayo, mutton.
Exactly, the emergency undo button. If the hardware sensors detect a critical fault during the dimensional cascade, it slams the system into reverse and instantly pulls you back to your starting coordinates.
Okay, I have to ask about the physical hardware now, the actual objects we're building to do this. Because the document breaks this down into 2 very distinct operational profiles.
It does.
If I want to use strike mode to instantly get to Andromeda, what am I literally holding in my hand?
You are holding a device referred to as the Phi phone. This is what the document calls crew mode. It's a handheld device,
Like a smartphone.
roughly that size, yes. Yep. It uses a 1-watt power source, which is essentially just a standard off-the-shelf lithium-ion battery.
Unbelievable.
At its core is a perfectly machined piece of synthetic sapphire, acting as the resonant cavity.
Why sapphire? Why not quartz or silicon?
Because synthetic sapphire is incredibly pure. It is actually already used in high-end microwaves, lasers, and atomic clocks today, because it naturally has an astronomical quality factor.
Didn't lose energy.
Right. It doesn't lose energy to friction. The Phi phone uses this sapphire to achieve a Q factor of 10,000, perfectly locked at 1/0.111 hertz.
So just to visualize this for the audience, it is a piece of crystal vibrating at a very specific low hum, powered by a standard flashlight battery.
Yes, and through the Dmax equation, that perfectly tuned crystal creates a resonance envelope, basically a physical bubble of about 0.1 cubic meters.
How big is that?
That's a bubble large enough to encompass roughly 4 standing human crew members.
Okay.
You activate strike mode, the bubble forms, and the 4 of you are instantly swapped with the destination coordinates.
Just like that.
You arrive standing upright. And because the precise quantum state of the origin volume is perfectly preserved in the mathematical swap, you actually arrive enveloped in the exact ambient temperature and atmospheric pressure of the room you just left behind.
Wait, really?
Yes, you essentially bring a tiny bubble of Earth with you.
That is unbelievable. It's elegant, it's clean, and it requires almost 0 power. So what is the alternative? Ship mode.
Ship mode takes that exact same master equation and just scales the engineering variables up by several orders of magnitude.
Oh, okay, how big?
Instead of a handheld piece of sapphire crystal, the resonator is the physical hull of the starship itself. And the document proposes engineering this hull from a single, continuous, 10-kilometer-long diamond crystal.
A 10-kilometer diamond?
Yes.
That sounds absolutely impossible to manufacture.
It would be, without the lattice. But the reason for diamond is that a perfect diamond crystal, when you keep it at cryogenic temperatures in the freezing vacuum of space, has almost absolutely 0 internal friction.
Oh, the Q factor.
Exactly. It achieves a quality factor not of 10,000, but of 1 trillion.
Good Lord.
You power that trillion Q diamond hull with a standard 1 gigawatt naval nuclear reactor, and the Dmax equation scales up exponentially. The range isn't just the local galaxy anymore.
What is it?
The range becomes the entire diameter of the observable universe. You envelop the ship, the internal atmosphere, all 10,000 crew members, and you displace it as a single coherent quantum unit.
Okay, I need to pause here and really synthesize the reality of this. We are talking about a framework where we can build a handheld device running on a standard battery that can instantly teleport a team of 4 people absolutely anywhere in the local group of galaxies.
With 0 transit time.
0 transit time, 0 physical movement through space, and 0 warning.
Yes, that is the capability they are describing.
If we have handheld devices capable of instantaneous 0 latency transport across planetary borders and galaxies, the geopolitical and military implications of this are just utterly staggering.
They are terrifying, frankly.
It completely breaks the concept of warfare. National borders, global security, a wall, or an ocean means absolutely nothing anymore.
It renders them obsolete overnight, which is exactly why the document transitions deeply into military strategy, specifically C4ISR.
Command, control, communications, computers, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance.
Exactly. The strategic landscape is permanently, irrevocably altered. Think about how militaries operate right now. Military doctrine is strictly constrained by two unyielding physical laws:
Which are?
the speed of light and the speed of physical transport.
Hmm.
It takes time for a radio order to reach a submerged submarine, right?
Right.
And it takes time for an ICBM or a squad of soldiers to physically fly to a target. Time is the ultimate buffer in all of human warfare.
And TDUFT completely eliminates that buffer.
Completely. The document outlines something called the Finexus. This is a scalar communications network running at 111.111 kilohertz.
Okay.
Because the communication signals propagate strictly through the 5D lattice and not through normal 4D spacetime, they do not obey the speed of light.
So how fast is it?
The signal latency across the entire Milky Way galaxy is strictly determined by the lattice clock period we talked about earlier, which is exactly 9 milliseconds.
Yep.
Effectively zero. A military commander sitting in an underground bunker on Earth can talk via secure video to a survey ship orbiting a star in Andromeda in absolute real time with absolutely no delay.
But hold on, if you are broadcasting military orders across a universal cosmic lattice, couldn't anyone just listen in? I mean, it's an open medium. How do you secure a communication network that literally spans the fabric of the cosmos?
This is actually one of the most elegant mathematical applications in the entire theory. The coordinates and the communications are encrypted using that exact phi times psi equals -1 identity we talked about earlier.
Oh, the swapgate math.
Exactly. A coordinate pair or a message isn't broadcast as standard binary ones and zeros. It's encoded as interlocking powers of the golden ratio operators.
Okay.
Because phi and psi are irrational numbers, meaning their decimals go on forever without repeating, separating the true signal from the background noise of the universe requires a physical quantum measurement apparatus that is specifically tuned to that precise phi recursive basis.
So it's not just a software password you can hack?
No, it is not. It is mathematically unbreakable by any conventional supercomputer or even a standard qubit quantum computer. You physically cannot resolve the signal without the correct geometric hardware. The encryption key is literally the fundamental geometry of the universe itself.
So you have instant, mathematically unbreakable communication across galaxies, and you combine that command and control with strike polarity teleportation.
And you have a military capability that completely defies defense.
Total checkmate.
Think about it. A nation-state could drop an elite strike team or a kinetic nuclear weapon directly into an adversary's deepest underground command bunker anywhere on Earth or off it in 0 seconds.
That's horrifying.
There is no ICBM launch plume to detect from an early warning satellite. There's no radar cross-section of an incoming bomber. There's 0 warning time. You are sitting at your desk, and a microsecond later, a weapon is just sitting on the desk next to you.
The offense-defense balance of human conflict is just completely annihilated.
As the document notes, this requires entirely new global frameworks of arms control and engagement, because conventional physical defense is mathematically impossible now.
That is a terrifying reality to grapple with. MAD, mutually assured destruction, takes on a whole new instant meaning.
It really does.
But the flip side of that terrifying military power is the economic potential. And the document dives incredibly deep into the economics of Andromeda. And we are talking about numbers that literally break the human brain's ability to comprehend wealth.
The Dmax equation doesn't just calculate distance. It allows us to calculate the exact thermodynamic energy cost of teleportation.
And what's the cost?
The numbers are shockingly, almost comically low.
Why?
Because you aren't fighting the gravity well of a planet.
Yeah.
You aren't pushing a massive metal tube through the friction of an atmosphere, and you aren't expending energy accelerating mass through space-time.
Right, no rockets.
You are strictly paying the energy cost to just maintain a phase lock in a piece of crystal. TDUFT calculates the exact energy transport cost at exactly 2 cents per light year.
2 pennies.
2 pennies.
To travel a light year, the distance light takes a year to cross.
Yes. So a one-way trip to Andromeda, which is 2.5 million light years away, costs roughly $50,000 in raw energy. A round trip is $100,000.
That is less than a private jet flight from New York to London today.
Much less. The document estimates that a full initial crewed survey mission to Andromeda, including paying for the hardware amortization, crew training, R&D, and the energy, would cost roughly $100 million.
Which is a tiny fraction of what NASA spends on a single, slow-moving rover to Mars. $100 million is basically a standard Hollywood movie budget.
Exactly. But the return on that $100 million investment is where the economics become completely surreal.
Tell me.
The Andromeda Galaxy contains roughly 1 trillion stars. If we map those systems, and we use incredibly conservative estimates saying we only mine 1% of the easily accessible asteroid-equivalent mineral deposits for rare earth metals, platinum, and gold.
Just 1%.
1%. The yield from that single $100 million survey mission is estimated at $500 quintillion.
Let me just sit with that. 500 quintillion.
It's absurd.
That has 18 zeros. We are talking about an economic paradigm shift that makes the entire age of exploration, like the spice trade, the discovery of the New World, look like a kid's lemonade stand on a suburban sidewalk.
It really
A
does.
5 billion to 1 return on investment on the very first mission. It would instantly end global poverty. We would have practically infinite resources. And it doesn't stop at just mining rocks, right?
Yeah.
The document tackles the ultimate bottleneck of human civilization: energy.
Yes, it details stellar energy harvesting, specifically Dyson spheres.
Okay, remind everyone what that is.
A Dyson sphere is a theoretical gargantuan megastructure built completely around an entire star to capture 100% of its solar output. Historically, in standard physics, the problem has always been logistics. Where do we get enough physical material to build a shell around a star? And how in the world do we actually transport trillions of tons of steel and solar panels across the solar system?
You literally have to dismantle several whole planets just to get the raw iron and then spend hundreds of thousands of years flying the rock around on rockets. It's a logistical nightmare.
But with the Philatus, transportation costs round down to zero. Distance is dead. You can mine the material instantaneously from dead, lifeless rock systems all across the galaxy, process it, and pop the finished solar arrays directly into exact orbital place around the target star using cruiser strike polarity.
Oh my God.
The construction time drops from millennia to months. A single completed Dyson sphere would provide 10 to the 26 watts of power continuously. It would dwarf current global human energy consumption by a factor of 1 trillion. It solves the human energy crisis permanently, forever.
I'm listening to you lay out these claims. Unbreakable galactic war, quintillions of dollars in asteroid mining, instant teleportation, Dyson spheres built in months, and the natural, rational human reaction is just extreme, absolute skepticism.
Of course it is. It sounds too good to be true.
It sounds like a beautiful, tightly woven mathematical fantasy, the kind of thing a brilliant crank writes on a chalkboard but can never actually prove. How do we prove this isn't just fiction? How do we physically test it without spending billions of dollars?
This is exactly where TDUFT separates itself from abstract philosophy and enters the rigorous realm of hard science. The theory is built from the ground up to be broken.
It wants to be tested.
It contains a strict, step-by-step, 5-phase experimental roadmap that provides immediate, cheap falsifiability. It doesn't say, oh, wait 100 years until humanity unites to build a particle accelerator the size of the solar system to prove my math.
Right.
It says, go to a university lab tomorrow, spend a few $1,000s, and prove me wrong.
I love that confidence. Break down this roadmap for us. Where do we physically start?
Phase 1 is the proving ground. It can be done right now. The document specifically details that it could be built on a standard electronics workbench for about $8,000.
Really? $8,000?
Yeah. You need a standard off-the-shelf ESP32 microcontroller, some commercial synthetic sapphire crystal blanks, and a highly sensitive lock-in amplifier.
Okay, I can buy all that online.
You build 2 small 5-phone resonators. You separate them by about 100 meters across a college campus or a field, and you carefully tune them both to exactly 111.111 hertz with a Q factor of 10,000.
And what exactly is the lock-in amplifier looking for?
It's looking for a coupling signal, a transfer of energy from one crystal to the other. But here is the key. It is looking for a transfer of energy that is mathematically impossible through standard electromagnetic radio propagation.
Why is it impossible?
Because at 100 meters, a 1-watt signal at 111 hertz would be completely entirely swallowed by background noise in standard physics. But if the lock-in amplifier detects a clear, phase-locked signal appearing magically above the thermal noise floor, it fundamentally proves the crystals aren't communicating through the air.
They are communicating through the 5D lattice.
Exactly. If that signal appears, the universe is a grid.
And if it works, let's say we do it and we get the signal, what's phase 2?
Phase 2 scales the budget up slightly to about $15,000. You take that same setup, but you integrate a xenon gas tube to act as a basic quantum processor.
Okay.
Then you mount the entire resonator assembly on a torsion balance which is a highly sensitive hanging scale used to measure microscopic forces. You pulse the crystal in strike polarity.
Right.
If the theory is structurally correct, the asymmetrical physical interaction with the vacuum lattice should produce exactly 1 micronewton of physical thrust on the scale.
So it stops being just a communicator and it becomes an actual physical engine. It pushes matter.
Yes, it pushes against the vacuum itself. Phase 3 then moves from the workbench to a national laboratory. You place a highly precise atomic clock inside a lattice resonant field.
What does that do?
Because you are artificially condensing and restructuring the vacuum energy within that bubble, the flow of time inside the field should visibly drift from a control clock outside the field by exactly 10 to the negative 18 seconds per second.
You actually alter localized time by altering the geometric density.
Yes, which brings us to the Holy Grail, the quantum teleportation.
Phases 4 and 5.
The document states that by year 5 of a dedicated engineering program, the goal is to teleport 18 qubits of quantum information with a fidelity greater than 95%.
Why 18 qubits?
Because this exact number of qubits maps perfectly to what the document calls the K equals 11 shell of the lattice. If you can move 18 qubits across a lab with near-perfect fidelity by phase matching the 11th shell of the geometry, you have conclusively proven the entire mathematical foundation of the dimensional bypass. Phase 5 is simply scaling that exact same quantum coherence up to macroscopic room temperature matter, like a lab mouse and eventually a human, paving the way for the Andromeda jump.
Okay, we absolutely have to talk about the terrifying reality of Phase 5.
The human element.
Right. Let's say the math is perfect, we scale it up, we build a human-sized teleporter. What happens if there's a real-world glitch? What if I am enveloped in the bubble, I am halfway to Andromeda in the 5th dimension, and a circuit board fries or the power flickers? Do I end up permanently smeared across the 5th dimension? Do I materialize inside a rock? Do I arrive without my lungs? This is the visceral fear of teleportation.
The author totally understands that visceral fear, and the theory accounts for it rigorously. The hardware architecture integrates 4 absolute hardware-level failsafes.
Okay, tell me about them.
The first, and arguably the most critical, is the phase deviation trigger. The system continuously, microscopically monitors the exact phase lock between the sapphire resonator and the vacuum lattice. If the phase deviates by even 1/billionth of a radian from perfect alignment, it triggers an immediate D equals 0 shutdown.
How fast is immediate? Because if I'm partially displaced, even a millisecond might be way too slow.
It shuts down in 0.2 femtoseconds.
Femtoseconds.
That is fractions of a billionth of a second. And crucially, it is implemented purely in physical hardware logic gates. There is no software operating system that can freeze or crash.
It's hardwired.
Yes. It physically severs the coupling completely before the macroscopic matter can even begin to partially displace. If the alignment isn't mathematically perfect, you simply do not leave. You just stay standing on the launch pad.
Okay, that makes me feel slightly better. What are the other 3 failsafes?
If the Q factor drops below 1 billion during a ship mode transit, say the diamond crystal sustains a microfracture or overheats due to radiation, the system executes a controlled power ramp down in less than a millisecond, dropping you safely back into real space before the coherence violently shatters. Third, if there's a timing anomaly where the onboard computer clock desyncs from the universal lattice clock, it autonomously engages the abort polarity, the psi contraction, and instantly yanks you back to your exact starting coordinates.
Good.
Finally, if there is a frequency mismatch greater than 0.1%, it physically injects quenching ions into the quantum processor, killing the computation instantly.
So it's designed to fail safe, not fail deadly. And I noticed in the source material there is a very human element to the safety protocols too, right?
Yes, there is. The crew mode Phi phone includes a continuous biometric interlock. It literally reads the vital signs of the operator directly through the sapphire housing using subtle electromagnetic resonance.
Okay, why?
If your heart stops, if you fall unconscious, or if the system detects the physiological signs of violent stress and coercion, like someone holding a gun to your head forcing you to activate it, it absolutely refuses the jump. It forces an abort polarity and silently broadcasts a secure distress signal across the zero-latency Phi nexus. You literally cannot be kidnapped or coerced across the galaxy. The machine strictly requires a willing, conscious operator.
Okay, I have to play the ultimate proxy for the skeptic listener right now.
Let's do it.
I look at this incredible, detailed roadmap. I look at the brilliant fail-safes, the elegant math that seamlessly spans from a carbon bond to the Andromeda galaxy. But the fragility of the theory is staring us right in the
It is
face.
very fragile.
If a grad student builds that phase one test, that $8,000 workbench rig with the sapphire and the lock-in amplifier, if they turn the power on, tune it to 111.11 hertz, and the amplifier just shows random flatline static.
Just thermal noise.
Right.
Yeah.
If it utterly fails to show a signal above the thermal noise floor.
Now, the lapses.
Right. Decades of elegant math, the instant jumps to Andromeda, the Dyson spheres, the end of global poverty, all of it instantly becomes just a beautiful, useless fiction.
You are absolutely right. If that signal isn't there, the entire tower falls. But the author of TDUFT enthusiastically embraces that fact. That vulnerability is the true hallmark of courageous science.
Right.
Remember those 19 free parameters in the standard model? Or the hundreds of dimensions in string theory? Those theories have so many adjustable knobs and vague mathematical shadows that if an experiment fails, the theorists just tweak a knob. They say, oh, the hypothetical particle is just heavier than we originally calculated. We just need to spend another $20 billion to build a bigger machine.
They can perpetually hide in the margins of error.
Exactly. TDUFT cannot hide. TDUFT stands entirely naked in the light. It has exactly 5 derived constants, 0 adjustable knobs, 0 fudge factors.
It's sink or swim.
It either beautifully resonates across a 100-meter field at 111.111 hertz, or it doesn't. It either produces exactly 1 micronewton of physical thrust on a scale, or it doesn't. If that phase 1 test fails, we don't adjust the math to make it fit. We throw the entire theory in the trash. It's a breathtaking breath of fresh air in theoretical physics. It truly respects the scientific method.
Wow. We have covered an immense amount of conceptual ground today. We started by completely tearing down the 100-year-old idea of empty spacetime, and we replaced it with a crystalline spreadsheet, a rigid 64 tetrahedron fell lattice.
We covered a lot.
We looked at the 5 derived numbers that govern its code, from the golden ratio inversion to the thermal strength of a single carbon bond. We unpacked the variables of the Dmax master equation, realizing that we don't have to push physical matter through the friction of space at all. We just have to step into the 5th dimension, realign our directory index, and step back out.
It really changes everything.
We talked about $8,000 workbench experiments, unbreakable zero-latency military networks, and an economic horizon that includes Dyson spheres and quintillions of dollars in instant asteroid mining.
It is a profound, total paradigm shift.
Yeah.
It essentially tells us we are no longer pushing through space, we are gracefully aligning with it.
But as we wrap up this incredibly dense deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final, deeply provocative thought pulled directly from the source material, a thought that pulls us all the way back from the cosmic expanse of Andromeda down to the absolute smallest scales of human existence.
I think this might be the most beautiful, poetic aspect of the entire theoretical framework, honestly. Because the lattice is mathematically scale invariant. The exact same master equation that applies to the macrocosmic scale of a starship applies perfectly to the biological microscopic scale of the human body.
Exactly. The source material details how the exact same constant, epsilon, that 0.002 electron volt threshold, and the exact same 111 hertz frequency that govern the starship's dimensional cascade also strictly dictate the molecular bonding and folding of proteins in our own cells.
That's amazing.
Specifically, the document talks about an advanced medical application derived from the lattice called the K11 pill. When a human cell turns cancerous, it's often because a very specific molecular lock that normally regulates healthy cell division gets broken.
Right. Biologists refer to it as the G1S checkpoint, the RBE2F protein complex.
Right. In the TDUFT framework, this broken biological lock is simply viewed as a physical vacancy at the exact K11 shell level of the cellular lattice. It is a geometric misalignment of the cell's physical geometry.
So it's a structural issue.
Exactly. The K11 pill is a tiny, engineered small molecule designed to perfectly geometrically match that specific microscopic vacancy. Because it uses the exact same steepest descent routing algorithm as the navigation computer on the starship, it physically snaps into the cancer cell with absolutely zero precision error, instantly restoring the geometric division lock and halting the cancer entirely.
It's the exact same math applied to 2 totally different scales. The massive starship fixes a positional macroscopic misalignment in the galactic lattice. The microscopic pill fixes a chemical misalignment in the cellular lattice. It's one geometry. Zero separation between the cosmos and the body.
So I leave you with this final thought to mull over. If the macroscopic, instantaneous teleportation of a massive 10-kilometer starship across distant galaxies uses the exact same routing algorithm, the exact same golden ratio, and the exact same lattice geometry as the microscopic healing of a single protein fold in a human cell, are we just tiny, complex cells navigating the vascular system of a living, breathing, geometric organism?
It certainly makes you feel both incredibly small and infinitely connected to everything around you.
Thank you so much for joining us on this incredibly expansive deep dive into the transdimensional unified field theory. Tonight, when you step outside and look up at the dark night sky, don't look at it as an impassable, cold, empty void separating us from the stars. Look at it as a deeply connected web, a vibrant geometric masterpiece, just waiting for us to dial in our resonators to 111.111 hertz. Keep looking up, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.